Good evening. I am Rick Mullin, millionaire. I own a mansion and a yacht. Thanks for having me, Bob and James. By way of introduction, I am a poet. I've got a few books I'm going to read from tonight. I'm also a painter and a journalist because I've got to make money, and it's definitely not on the painting. James, that was great, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm going to begin with a poem from a book that came out last year called The Basilisk. And it's the first poem in the book. And what I like to do when I start out a collection is, hit them with something completely outre, to keep the riffraff out. Just knock them out in the first poem and get it over with. I should warn you that I'm a formalist if that doesn't, come across immediately. Actually, I should never mention that. My theme is Polyphemus. He is the keeper of the island bones, forever at his restless cave of sounds, forever busy with his famous stones, considering the solely righteous grounds on which he cultivates a wide fatwa. The helicopters bother him. He howls and rakes the air into a thunderbox. Who is it speaks in everlasting vowels that simmer like green turtles on the rocks? I hear you. La 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 la. But have you seen it yet? I mean the eye, all-seeing, through, above, around, behind. A no man's land that beckons to the sky, meandering, eventually blind, the final O and aperture. Selah. Thank you. I then like to follow with an American sonnet. Are we familiar with American Sonnet? Terence Hayes' book, American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin. Just knocked me right the hell out. And I got to review it for the Raintown Review, and I'm only dropping that to say that in the next Raintown Review, I've reviewed James's Kofefe. I only hope the book finally makes it out, but it's imminent. So look for the Raintown Review. Terence Hayes' book was great, and the American Sonnet was really innovated by Wanda Coleman, who sort of spoke of a jazz sonnet. Don't look for narrative here, necessarily. Rhythm, beat, melody, anything like that. And I'll add that this is my most frequently rejected poem. American Sonnet. Look up in the sky. Concentric rhyme, a murmuration, ghosts that fly to me in piles along the Hudson. Every time I come up dry, a line of coffins. See? I've got this thing I shake like chicken pox and beat like emphysema. My American sonnet saws like pine and hammers tight, cocooning in the night a good Samaritan, the soul of maybe LBJ. I light a match that goes by dark side at the docks like bright titanium. A bird, a plane, a metaphor for gender politics and phone booth alteration. It's a train, but faster than the green Illumitrix, more powerful than clockwork in a box. I'm going to settle down now a little bit, maybe. That poem was written on my commute from New York, in which I take a ferry from Hoboken around the Horn to the Wall Street area. And here's another one that I wrote on that ferry. I keep going back and forth from this microphone. Is it okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm eventually going to rip this microphone off the stand.
Do it.
Okay. This poem is written for a poet named Kate Light. I don't know if you ever met her, but one of the few people I've met in life who's a real angel. We didn't know each other very well, but she helped me out at one point in which I had like the shock of understanding that this is a person that listened to me when I talked to her and picked up on something that was of interest to me. She was a violinist in the Metropolitan Opera. My friend and I went to see Mozart's Requiem at Drew University, and I was like delighted when the orchestra came out and Kate came out. She died a few years ago. This is dedicated to her. I'm working the light and microphone here. In a mist, off Manhattan for Kate Light. Streaming Mozart's Requiem from the cloud, a chorus crystallizing somewhere high above the Hudson River in a shroud of nearly concrete fog this morning. I must navigate by radar, iron-bound, a ghost aboard a grave form in the mist. I see no buildings. I do not see water. Lost at harbor, turning in a twist of an untraceable idea of order, out here somewhere gone around the horn. My vehicle, a hollow drum, has found the rhythm of a river down below, to which I poured a brisk angelic sound from agents in the wind of time, the flow of passing shadows, dark and torn. Thanks. The poems in this book, by the way, are all written in a 15-line sonnet form that I innovated, and I'm waiting to this day to see somebody else use it so I can say that I've actually invented something. But right now it's all mine. Happy. But I insist the most important thing is happiness. Ask Thomas Jefferson or Bertrand Russell. Leave them pondering. Prescribe yourself your favorite medicine, go home and go to bed for like a week. Tonight, the mariachi band plays Happy in the old town square. The pastel tones of twilight wash up on a pink jalopy and a t-shirt with the logo of the Stones. Be happy. Can you tell me what that is, oh coterie of intellectuals? You can't. You have no theme for the analysis beyond the banda of a potted plant that leans into the sunshine that we seek. Thank you. I hope you like that 15-line sonnet, because I'm now going to hit you with a sonnet crown of 15-line sonnets. This goes back to my high school days. I told you this was going to happen. I'm utterly vexed by podiums, for obvious reasons. This is called the Heavyweight Crown. Coaches Thibodeau and Hare ate lunch across the highway at the Hornet's Nest. They got banged up. Then rolling with the punch taught driver's ed. Will this be on the test, I asked one afternoon. Should I drive drunk, like you? The surly Thibodeau made sure to tap me for a wrestling demonstration later on that week. Mullin, you're about the size and weight and bone formation for a move we used to call the double dunk. I want to show Coach Hare, get over here. I crouched and shot in for a knee, upending Thibodeau, who stunk of beer. Coach Hare stood up and left for the gym. At 3, I passed him in the parking lot. He stunk. I passed him in the parking lot. He stunk of history and really basic math. He pulled a canvas gym bag from his trunk. He looked like he was starting down a path to something I don't even want to think about, like Florida. Perhaps by heading south, he'd catch up with his numbers. He was down and knocked out loaded. Living hand to mouth in Boca or some other fishing town on Purgatory Beach, he'd thrive, no doubt. He'd flip the swampland of the Garden State and stare into the sundown of his days, no longer vexed by time or making weight, his mind less prone to diagramming plays. He'd light a cigarette. he put it out. He lit a cigarette, and he put it out. A flash in the eternal parking lot 3 hours prior to another hopeless bout with Morristown. The varsity was not prepared. The season slipped away a week ago in Madison. Joe Gallagher was not about to score on Obadiah Pine, their heavyweight. No Hornet challenger was up to his opponent down the line. The battle of Fort Pillow, so to speak. The coach and Estermas smelled history. The smell of math and weight and time. Predestination takes down mystery. The parking lot was redolent of crime and tragedy foreshadowed. Timeless, Greek. The tragedy foreshadowed, timeless, Greek, pulled in a hometown audience of size, the Irish and Italian cheek to cheek. The fans from Morristown were otherwise. They filled the bleachers partway to the top. A week ago, the sheriff cleared the gym in Morristown, but that was basketball. Coach Thibodeau made headlines. Picture him encouraging a courtside free-for-all. They let him slide. His brother was a cop. But this was wrestling. It's a cooler sport, and everyone had learned their lesson, right? Coach Hare was more or less a decent sort, not likely to engage in such a fight. If things got out of hand, he'd make it stop. And when things get out of hand, he makes it stop by throwing in the towel. He had a lot of towels inside that canvas bag. He had to mop the mat a bit when little Billy Cowles, who weighed 106, went down. The spines of Hornets, one by one, were tied in knots by flashing Morristown colonials. Tom Gunn, the Telegraph's photographer, got shots no wholesome hometown editor would run. The gym was definitely showing signs of weekend riot redux as the night went on. Outrageous epithets were heard on either side. "You're coming in too light," screamed one colonial. We all concurred as Joe stepped up to Obadiah Pine. Joe Gallagher and Obadiah Pine shook hands, and time and weight were redefined. Consensus took the ordinary line. Joe Gallagher would not be pinned, but pined, a ghastly variation on demolished. The giants circled, crouched like samurai, a fleshy, loping, mobile Pyrenees in black and white, one giant evil eye. Slim chance of standard shooting for the knees, impossible. Old Queensbury abolished under blurring Friday lights, a hunk of sheer anxiety hung overhead. Then Gallagher pursued the double dunk. Coach Terrio, "Remember what I said." The move came off. The move came automatic, smooth, and polished. The move came off. The sweaty mat looked polished where gargantua and juniper balled up and rolled about. The scouts from every college on the eastern seaboard gasped. Called up, the constables from Florham Park held hands and formed a line in front of Morristown, their faces grim. They eyed the hometown bleachers. Halfway up, Coach Thibodeau looked down on Gallagher and Pine, gigantic creatures turning like a globe. The frozen stands went silent. Then a piercing whistle screed, a buzzer blared. The turn came to a stop. The referee in thundertone decreed that Joe would start the second turn on top with Obadiah in the Underlands. Well, we're coming into the home stretch here. Well, Obadiah in the Underlands was not how Gunner from the Telegraph would call it. But there's a photo that lands the action where a pre-writ epitaph for Gallagher is filed, or even binned. The solemn main event pushed forward, slow into the cold fluorescent night, a grinding pas de deux that tortured Thibodeau. His mug of cruelty went slack, reminding us of seasons blowing in the wind, and Gallagher, our ardent heavyweight at half point in the hard tectonic third. Young Obadiah moved up in the statewide rankings as the slamming hand was heard, and Gallagher, per destiny, was pinned. Joe Gallagher, per destiny, was pinned, and Morristown felt justified. Coach Hare crossed over to congratulate, he grinned, the smiling other coach, and standing there was photographed, still clinging to a crunch of towels, a photo in the bottom drawer of junkyard cabinets. And still, I remember Morristown in victory, the final score that jarred a powder keg we called December in a restless gym. The coaching staff, that bunch of former glory athletes gone at last to Florida, some falling on their sword. The formative full Nelson of a past where Nixon forfeits everything to Ford, and coaches Hare and Thibodeau eat lunch.
Woo!
Okay, a couple more. Night. When I opened for Los Dildos at the Y, I knew I'd get my ass kicked. They had horns and huge cojones, and a different guy on drums. Their singer wore a crown of thorns, a little heavy on the metaphor, and introduced himself as Caliban. "This isn't going to be your night," he said. He grabbed a cold one from the garbage can and greened out with a spotlight turns to red. Establishing the 5-chord on the 4, I couldn't feel the strings. I let it slide. The loners at the bar looked good to go. The singer's girlfriend actually cried. I heard the one-time drummer moaning low beside the lowing angels at the door. So, my daughter Lydia is here tonight. Hi, Lyd, thank you for coming. So I had to curtail like my usual reading, like the one about stalking the barista. I couldn't do that tonight. That would have been inappropriate. I close with a poem that invokes Lydia's dear aunt and every other woman on the planet Earth. Margarita Night. The angels bring it all back down to business. Their burning eyes, no comfort. The refraction of their sea salt wings beyond the isness of their blank and undeniable attraction. They're not inclined to sing Return to Sender on the morning after. They are late, and we are blind, redundant, on the verge of crossing over to the latent state they mock in their avoidance as we splurge on earth and veer into a too-weak bender. Listen closely. You will see them rise to effervescent waves of Alka-Seltzer and the shock waves of our great demise. Beware, remember, and above all else, do not allow Christine to touch the blender. Thank you very much. Always great to be in Philadelphia.